Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City of Haslett Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 22nd. The time is 6:37 p.m. and we do have a quorum present. I would like to begin with a couple items of community interest. We have on April 9th, there is an Easter egg hunt in the park. If you got little ones or you just like to see kids have fun, go out to the park at 4 p.m. and watch the Easter egg hunt. On May 7th, the general election early voting dates and times, so that begins on Monday, April 25th through Friday, April 29th from 8 to 5. That's at the Legacy Learning Center on Schoolhouse Road. Then again on Saturday, April 30th from 7 to 7, Sunday 10 to 4, and Monday, May 2nd, and Tuesday, May 3rd from 7 to 7 again. Moving on to agenda item 3, approval of the January 25th regular meeting minutes. Any discussion on the minutes that were generated from our last meeting?
I'd like to make a motion, we accept the minutes as written.
Yeah, in our agenda, it says city council meeting minutes, but this is the planning and zoning commission meeting minutes. Motion's been made to approve as written. Is there a second? And seconded, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to our public hearing items. Agenda item 4A, discuss, consider, and act regarding a recommendation to City Council regarding an ordinance amending Chapter 14 zoning, Article 4, use standards 4.1-1, table of allowed uses by adding truck, time fill, and fast fill fueling stations under the transportation related uses subsection 4.2.5 and 4.2.6 by adding truck, time fill, and fast fill fueling station standards. We're going to begin with our staff presentation.
Yeah, Chairman and members of the commission, this is a request to add an additional use to our use chart. We had a group of people that came in and they're going to want to put in a new type of business which was not really classified very well in our zoning ordinance, and so this actually defines where they would go, what districts, which would be in the AF and industrial district, and it gives some criteria, and we're recommending that it's done with a spatial use permit, and that's what's spelled out in the ordinance in front of you. And what this would be is a compressed natural gas, mostly filling trucks, and the time fill is where they pull in and park, and they're hooked up to a gas line, and then they leave, and they'll have one of their own personal vehicles parked in the parking lot. They can get in that vehicle and leave and then come back the next morning and the truck will be filled. Also, there will be a fast fill option that where you can pull in and fill up and then leave. This actually helps the supply of gas, so you don't have to have a lot of gas all at one time, but you can just slow fill 45 to 50 trucks all at one time over a time period. No, the only thing there is one thing I'd like to add. What they're planning on using is a renewable source of methane gas to fill up the trucks. So it's not like normal gas system, it'll be renewable gas.
I'm sorry, if somebody's speaking, it's not coming across.
Yeah, thank you. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. If you desire to speak and you've called in, if you would put your name in the chat field or raise your hand and let us know you want to speak, we'll call on you. But if anybody is wishing to speak for or against, the public hearing is now open. Mr. Weber, if you'd like to speak, now is your opportunity.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you okay.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to follow up with what Maurice mentioned. I was at the pre-development conference that he mentioned with the specific user, and I'm here representing them tonight. But really, just wanted to thank Maurice first of all for putting this all together for us. We understand the process that he's outlining here with the zoning amendment and the SUP. We don't see any issues with that. I mean, the only request that I think we would like to throw out there is an opportunity to walk through these standards with Maurice and the city of Hazlet. Not here tonight, obviously, but before this either gets approved at council, if that's the route it goes, or potentially if needed, we wouldn't be opposed to this being pushed a month or continued a month so that conversation could be had. We would like to walk through the standards that are outlined in this recommendation prior to city council approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weber, and if you're done speaking, please remember to mute. Is there anyone else wishing to speak for or against agenda item 4A? Yes. Mr. Weber, could you please put your address in the chat field? That way we can capture that for the meeting minutes. Thank you.
Yes, I'll type that up now.
Okay, recognizing no one else in the room or online has shown an interest in speaking during the public hearing, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move to discussion. Any questions for the city staff?
I think I've got a couple of questions. Where's I think you said it was methane that they were going to be loading in the truck?
Yeah, that's one of the things that they could put in there. Natural gas or methane
Where's
gas.
the methane coming from? Is it piped in or what?
I don't know how it's going to be done. It's my understanding it'll probably be trucked in and stored
Okay.
there on site.
And they'll have storage tanks and
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
maybe unload it from the trucks. Okay. None of these trucks will be running while they're sitting there being, I mean, the quick fill maybe, but the slow fill, they'll literally leave the truck, turn it off,
Yes.
hook it up, go home, come
Yes.
back the next morning.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
I think that's
At any time, do you see that we would define the storage systems for these compressed gases? Or is there some industry standards that we're requiring them to adhere to for the storage system?
They'll have to be adhered to as far as the standards, the what they're placed on, the fill, and those are pretty much regulated by the state and also by the fire department. Just what kind of cushions they're going to be setting on and operated.
But as part of our standard, we're not going to define the requirements for those underground storage or above ground storage systems. We're going to let the state.
Well, it's a state, and whatever our current standards are for, like, if somebody puts in a gasoline station, there's standards that we would make sure they adhere to for any kind of storage facility like that where you have a fuel. With emergency cutoffs, fuel shutoffs, those kind of things.
And I believe in the standard, it required a masonry wall to screen the facility, if I remember correctly.
Let's see, what does it say here? Yeah, there's a screening facility that meets it, that hides it from the view of the
Right.
street. And
So are we defining how high that screening wall needs to be? So does it need to screen the highest, most object on the property being the truck, or a delivery system that would be, or a vending system that would be higher than the truck?
normally it'll be a 6 foot screening device. They'd have their option between 6 and 8. When you get over 8, it changes from a screening device to a structure that has to be engineered.
And with this type of fuel system, delivery system, is there any concerns about blast radius with that masonry wall being there? if there was a catastrophic failure. I'm not familiar with the methane fueling system for commercial vehicles, so
Mhm.
my concern would be that there would, that would contribute to even a greater potential impact if there was a catastrophic failure.
Yeah, I'm sure it'd be treated much like a natural gas situation or a propane situation.
So no concerns from our fire department? Or
No, the fire department was in the meeting that when we had it with this group, and they came with about 10 different people from the organizations that wants to do this, and they've done it all over the United States. They're
Okay.
starting to. It's really converting large fleets of trucks, like the Amazon group, will probably be one of the primary users of this facility. So
Okay.
where they can, park their trucks there and get them fueled up while the people are gone.
I don't have any other questions. Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I have a question. So they're planning on a new facility? This is not retrofitting anything existing?
No, it's not an existing facility. It's on bare dirt right now.
Bare dirt right now. So the plans will be submitted.
Plans will be
as
submitted,
usual.
and you will see a site plan,
Yeah.
and as they bring forth the application.
Okay, so a lot of these questions that we've been asking will all be
All the details will come
addressed all
forward.
during the plan review.
That's correct.
So, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, is there a motion?
Yes, this is Paul Wallach, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval that city council approve an ordinance amending chapter 14, zoning article 4, use standards 4.1, table of use by adding truck, time fill, and fast fill fueling stations under the transportation related use and necessary subsection.
Agenda item 4B, discuss, consider, and act regarding a recommendation to City Council regarding an ordinance amending Chapter 14 zoning, Article 7.4, general terms defined concerning front yard and rear yard definitions for residential accessory structure, sorry. And we'll begin with our staff presentation.
The chairman and members of the commission, this is an ordinance that came forward because in watching the council work, there were variances that were being applied for and actually approved. And under the local government code, variances, when you're looking at zoning ordinances, should be used for non-self-imposed hardships. And when uses are put in the side yard and is not defined, then there's a problem because our ordinance says things have to be in the rear yard. So we defined, there's setbacks, then there's yards. So we defined what the front yard was, and then everything to the rear of it is the rear yard. And that would be from the front facade of the building extended out to the property lines, and everything back would be considered the rear yard. So if somebody wanted to bring in an accessory structure, a pool, which is a common one, they would have to normally seek relief from the council in the way of a variance. But this is a self-imposed. So what we've done is taken that self-imposed out of it and making it okay to put a structure in your side yard as part of your rear yard, as long as it's outside of the setbacks or any kind of easement on the side. And so it really helps the council out really closely follow the local government code. No, sir.
Okay, we're done with the staff presentation. We'll move to the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against agenda item 4B? And again, if you have a desire to speak and you're on the call, then you may enter your name in the chat field. We'll call on you. Okay, recognizing that no one came forward to speak during the public hearing, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move to discussion. Any questions for the city staff? If there are no questions, is there a motion?
Yeah, this is Paul Wallach again. I'll make a motion recommending that we that we recommend approval to City Council for ordinance amending Chapter 14 zoning, Article 7.4, general terms defined concerning front yard and rear yard definitions for residential accessory structure.
Okay, there's a motion recommending approval. Is there a second? Motion has been seconded. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on, agenda item 4C, discuss, consider, and act regarding a recommendation to City Council regarding approval of the Sweetgrass Phase 1B final plat. And we'll begin with our staff presentation.
Chairman and members of the commission, this is, like I said, Sweetgrass Phase 1B, and there's a Phase 1C and a Phase 1A, and you can see on the diagram up at that location, there's actually two portions of it, but it's west of Intermodal and Extended, and also north of Bluebound Road and south of future Hazlitt Parkway. And this is a development that's ongoing, and they've met the engineering requirements as set forth by the city. And if you have any questions as far as engineering wise, Mr. Mike Anderson is online.
Thank you. Is the applicant present this evening?
Yes, sir. This is Tom Dayton representing the applicant tonight. I don't have a presentation or anything, but am available to answer any questions. And we've been working with Mr. Anderson on getting the plans approved. So yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, since there's no other presentation at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against agenda item 4C? Okay, recognizing no one showed an interest to speak during the public hearing, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move to discussion. Any questions for the city staff or the applicant or the representative?
Nothing's changed on the plat, has it, for this section?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to tack onto that question, Ms. Snedeker. So in the analysis, it says generally consistent. Is there anything that is inconsistent? And if so, could that be identified for us?
This is Mike Anderson. Yeah, the language used in there was, I'm getting some feedback. Pardon me here. Yeah, we did not review the preliminary plat formally. If you'll recall, we were brought in on Phase 1A and 1C this summer. And so that's the reason why we say generally consistent, because we did not do a formal review, nor were we involved in the process of developing the preliminary plat. However, as as a due diligence effort to ensure that we were generally consistent with the plat, we did go ahead and review this against the preliminary plat, hence the wording. So just a matter of some wordsmith there, but I would say it conforms with what you guys approved as far as the preliminary plat goes.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Ms. Snedeker, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the city staff or the applicant's representative? If not, is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend the city. Oh, I have that. Double talk too, but anyway, I'd like to make a motion, we recommend the city council, the final plat for Sweetgrass Phase 1B to be approved.
Okay, there's a motion to recommend approval. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, the motion's been seconded. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on, agenda item 4D. Discuss, consider, and act regarding a recommendation to City Council regarding approval of a site plan for 2400 Westport Parkway, Lot 1, Block A, Alliance Crossing Addition. And we're going to begin with our staff presentation.
Yeah, Chairman and members of the commission, this is a request that has come into us for a site plan, a revised site plan for where the USPS facility is, located in the shopping center right at Westport and I-35. And currently, as you go out there, there are no really spots reserved or secured for the delivery vehicles for the post office. And so what happens is if the parking is all taken up in the front, they've been parking in the rear in the fire lane, and which is problematic to our fire department. And so what this does, and there's even a note on the site plan that says there's no parking allowed in the fire lane, and it also reserves a spot for the vehicles to park, and they can actually secure them overnight with a gated facility. And so it's best for the city as far as functioning for life safety protection, and it also helps the post office as they expand into the lease space next to them.
Okay, any additional information from the city? And is there any representative present for the property that's going to speak or add additional content for this evening's meeting?
Yeah, yes, my name is Brett Floyd with Cross Architects, and we are the property owner. And I think the presentation was good, and I think it kind of described what we're trying to do here. But I would like to add that the overall site and parking for the development is there's still, even though we're taking up some of this parking with this new kind of fenced-in vehicle storage area, there is still plenty of parking for the overall development. And we'll be adding landscaping around the fence. And so it won't just look like a kind of a fence out in a parking lot. It'll be we're trying to make it blend in as much as we can. So, but anyway, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, and did you give your address? Mr. Flory, if you could put your address in the chat field, we can capture that for the meeting minutes. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against agenda item 4D? Okay, no one came forward during the public hearing. We'll close the public hearing and we'll move to discussion. Is there any questions for the city staff or the applicant?
Yeah, this is Paul Wallach, for Mr. Lori. I didn't hear you correctly, I guess. The owner of this parking lot, you're representing the owner?
The owner of the, yes, development.
Okay, so the owner is obviously on board with this, setting aside parking for the postal service.
That is correct. Yeah, he hired us to get this site.
A minor little question up here, you call that Hazlitt Road at the top, isn't that Westport Parkway?
Yeah, I
Just-
believe you're correct on that.
I mean, if you're gonna file it, at least get the right road. Okay, all right, thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, any other questions? If there are no other questions, is there a motion?
Yeah, this is Paul Wallach again. I'll recommend that we, or move that we recommend approval to council of a site plan for 2400 Westport Parkway, Lot 1, Block A, Alliance Crossing Addition.
Okay, there's a motion to recommend approval. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion been seconded. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on, agenda item 4E, discuss, consider, and act regarding a recommendation to City Council regarding approval of a site plan for 791 Westport Parkway, Lot 1, Block 3, Westport Parkway Edition, and we'll begin with our staff presentation.
Chairman and members of the commission, this has been submitted to the city, and there are several things that are taking place. There's some modifications to the landscaping. There's an addition of a dumpster, and there's some additional parking being provided, as well as extra tree in the parking area that would be required due to the spacing. And the proposed landscape plan actually removes some trees that are over the requirement, but they're affecting the building. And there's a note on the drawing that they will meet our tree preservation ordinance, as if when they remove those things, they'll put money in the tree fund that the city will use to put trees somewhere else in the city.
Any additional information to share? Okay,
No,
is
sir.
the applicant present this evening? And do you have any information you'd like to share at this time? And please state your name and address if you would for us when you come forward. Yes, just press the center button and it'll come on.
Oh, this one. There you go. Can you hear me? My name is Scott Guy. My address is 8348 Crystalwood Drive in Dallas, Texas, 75249. I'm been working with a group. This is one of the owners of the property. I'm a construction project manager. What we have is a building that is vacant at this time, and we have a tenant that wants to move in, but we do have to increase the parking area. One of the things is that we're not adding a lot of concrete. The one area of parking, if you look halfway up, there's 6 spaces. They're very short. And if you notice in a lot of parking lots, the pickup trucks that are larger stick out 2 feet into the parking lane, or into the fire lane. And one of the things I want to do is extend that about 4 feet. Well, as we did that, we are going to add parking places up at the top also. That was a pad right there that the previous owner had a storage container at the back of it. And I do want to add a couple parking places on the west side of the property. So what happened is when I did this is it triggered a landscaping, and we went to Hillwood and they came up with a plan and gave it to us. And when I submitted the plans, we've been dealing with Maurice at the city. We started going back and forth with the landscaping, which I understand that they do want to bring the landscaping up to par, because I think it has dropped down a little bit from the other, from the previous owner of the building. But guess what I was trying to say is, on some of the trees that we want to remove, we do want to work with the city and for the tree preservation. One of the things is the front of this lot is it's pretty condensed. And I know one of the issues was the frontage on it. And when they did the calculations, they want certain amount of canopy trees. And we're going to, soften up with bushes up at the front. So the transition from the lawn to the tilt wall is going to be softer. But I have a little bit of a concern with the additional canopy trees because of the entrance and exits right there. And what's happened is we lose 50 feet on the frontage, and they want us to add an X amount of trees to the front on the frontage, but it kind of condenses everything to even closer than what it is. And I do know that this entry and exit can be a concern. Part of it is safety with traffic because there is a lot of traffic on Westwood or on Westport Parkway. And I have been at the building a couple times, but there's been a couple serious accidents out front. And so I want to be kind of careful with putting too much landscaping in the front of the building. I know we're trying to preserve the natural look and everything of the building, but there was a little kind of back and forth as to whether they want ornamentals or canopy trees. So, I just want you guys to take a look at this and see if we can we're okay with the plan as it is. We'll be dealing with an arborist in regards to the removal of the trees. I know that we do have preservation. I'm used to dealing with that with the urban preservation with the city of Fort Worth. And we are adding quite a bit of landscaping to the building. So I don't know if you're familiar with that building, but
partial owner. Need my name and address. My name is Butler, Eaton, and my address is 416 North Bailey, Fort Worth. We plan on making that building beautiful. We had an issue with the storm a year ago, which some of the stuff was frozen, and as a result, some of the landscaping was not the best right now. We had somebody come out about 2 weeks ago and clean it up, and we're in the process now of making that building. So I'm an owner. I live in Fort Worth. I'm coming up here all the time. But going forward, I think you'll be proud to have it in the city.
Thank you. Any additional information you want to share at this time?
It's right across the street from Amazon. East.
there's a lot of trees up at
Okay. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against agenda item 4E? Recognizing no one came forward, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move to discussion. Any questions for the city staff or the applicant?
So you, talking to the architect, you had made a comment about traffic. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Particularly, I guess, egress, that you had seen some accidents out there? Is in.
Yes, a couple of times. I do think it was opposing traffic that comes across because there is a lot of semi-truck tractors. I know it gets busy with Amazon in the morning. Because at the front of our building, we've got a gate, so you can come in when you're traveling westbound. You can pull in on the right-hand side there,
Right.
and you can go all the way around the parking lot. And there is a fence in there with a rolling gate, so you can go out and then go right back out on traffic. Because the entrance gate is on that one side. I do know that there's a small berm at the front of the building, and there were a lot of rocks and whatnot, which I've had removed already because that was not part of, I mean, it doesn't really go with anything that's along that whole strip of the commercial buildings. And the parking, everything we're doing with the parking is kind of increasing the use of the space. We're not adding very much concrete at all. But I do know that one of the things I do like to make sure is life safety issues are always an important aspect of any work you're doing. And so I did not want trucks blocking the fire lane. So the places just behind there, if you can see on there, they're actually longer spaces than the ones below. So I thought that if we could extend that out 4 feet approximately, we would remove the, any protrusion into the fire lane. But when we did that, of course, it triggered for landscaping because they do want a buffer, which is kind of difficult to see from Westport Parkway, but they do want to not be able to see like bumpers and whatnot of the car. So we're going to run shrubbery all the way down the side and wrap around the front. But you can see on that front, the rocks are gone, but it's really overgrown. And the only, I'm trying to think of, on the left-hand side there, we are going to add a couple of parallel parking places up against the building. There's about 8 feet that we'll be able to keep off the fire lane. And at the back of the property, you look right at the north part, just to the right, right there. That's already an existing pad. And what I want to do is just put that striping in for additional parking.
Right.
Because one of the drawbacks of the building when we initially got it was a smaller amount of parking, because that is a pretty large building, and with the interior work we're doing, there wasn't enough parking spaces to meet, typical office warehouse space. There's a minimum requirement. So one of the best things you can have is additional parking places for a tenant. So we're not adding too much concrete, and we're winding up doing quite a bit of landscaping work, but I really think it'll, dress up the property really nice and get what's cleaned up there.
Yeah, I guess my concern, and I think we talked about it, but on the west side of the building is the egress, and the only way to go is west. There's no left turn or right turn.
Correct.
Yeah. So obviously, if you want to go west and you're looking back to the east, you've got to be able to see the traffic coming.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's a major concern. Yeah, we'd like it to look nice up there, but you don't want to interfere with the visual off to the west, or off to the east.
Right.
Any traffic. Okay.
And
And
that
I'm
is
sure
a
you'll
low
work with the
berm.
city
There
on
is a low berm there, but to meet the requirements to add since we are removing a couple of overgrown, canopy trees, and one of them is hitting the awning. Of course, that typically triggers is you've got to add certain caliber trees. But what happens is if we do put a canopy tree up towards the front, I know the canopy is going to be higher, but you still is eventually going to get in a bigger diameter. And I want to be real careful with that corner. It's typically almost like any corner lot when you need your field of view for fences or whatever, whether it is residential or commercial property. And so I want to be kind of careful with having to add too many more canopy trees, because the property already will have 4 even after a couple of them have been removed.
So I guess the question of Mr. Mike, so we can work with them to make that work so that it doesn't impair the visual, but still.
they can adjust where they put the trees.
Yeah.
What the equation is you take your frontage and divide by 40, and that gives you how many trees are required. And so when
Okay.
you do the mathematics, 6 street trees are required. They don't have to be evenly spaced. They can be grouped, and they could be placed so they don't interfere with looking back over your left shoulder. It's just a matter of how they design their locations of the tree. And so it's possible. One of the things when it was originally submitted, they had the distance and then they subtracted out the driveways. That's not how the calculation is done. It's frontage.
Right.
And
Wait.
so with the 6 trees that are required is meeting the ordinance. And so there's really no way we could adjust that, but we just need to work with them, on how they plant their trees.
But they could be put anywhere on the property,
And they're street trees. These are street trees,
Oh,
so they
just-
have to be in front.
just street trees in front.
Yes.
They could be more on the ingress side then.
Yes.
Could push more to the east, not to the west.
Yeah, and I also want to speak to another thing is I'm not surprised there's more accidents at that intersection where Amazon comes out.
Yeah.
And we've been sort of fussing with Amazon because they've been having people out there directing traffic and having extra security out there and blocking it, not letting people pass the way they should. And they're causing some of the problems out there themselves. And they've done that without permission of the city blocking the road.
I have a question on the calculation for the tree preservation fund. So is the city going to measure the existing trees to see what the existing total caliper inches are there and
On
to
the-
do the deduct?
On the plan, they actually have the caliper inches that they've identified they're going to be removed.
Are we going to measure that ourselves, or are we just going to take their numbers?
Well, at this point, we're going to take their word for it, but if you want us to, we'll go out there and measure them.
I'll leave that to the city to determine whether that's necessary. I was just asking the question.
Well, yeah, we want to work that, to satisfy you. And the only thing is, I do understand your distances on your frontage. What happens though is when you take 50 feet out of that front, we condense the front. And we're running a row of bushes all along the front of the building. And so if we keep putting in canopy trees, we're going to get limited light, which is going to affect all the plantings along the front of the building. But then also your water demands go way up. And in this day and age, everybody's trying to conserve and be careful with this. But there isn't a lot of room from the frontage to the building. And when you run, 3 feet with plantings, 4 feet, we have that berm at the front with the trees up. When you start adding them all we're kind of adding them at that corner because there's not a lot of room if you look at the plans as to where the canopy trees are. I know you guys have your ordinance with that, but it's something I wanted to point out because it is very, very dense in there.
Well, part of the solution may be, like I mentioned earlier, how you group them as you come into your site, the ingress to the site. You could have 2 on that little protrusion out on the east side which would not, hurt your visibility. And then 1 on the very west side, which you're showing. And then that way you'd only have 2 or 3 in the middle. And so I think it can be done where you actually meet the spirit of the ordinance and not interfere with the visibility.
Okay.
Might have to shift some of that around, how you have the lower
Well,
landscape.
most of all these trees are already existing, and they're
I
larger
understand.
caliper trees, so you can't do anything with those. And I do know one of the things is so the front of the building, this building is really hidden from with all of the trees and whatnot. And I understand, with the ordinance of wanting to do that, we did want to open up on that east side right there and take that one Mexican, forget the name of it. But it's that plant, yeah, the tree right there, because it's growing way down and you have no sight line to the building. And it is a nice building, especially with, what we're gonna do with the building. It's got,
Yeah, I've driven by, I drive by
Okay.
that all the time, and
Right,
it is
so
a
you
nice
see it.
looking building.
but you
and
can't really see it when
You're-
all the,
You're right. Some of those original trees were planted way too close to the building, and so that's
Mm-hmm.
the reason why you're getting that the rubbing.
right. And I'm concerned too, because eventually they'll, we can have issues with the root system on the foundation. And that's why we're trying to remove a couple of them, but we still wanted to add other vegetation and plantings all along the front. And I was just trying to see if you could work with us in regards to the amount of canopy trees in there, because it is so dense, because the trees that we're leaving there, there's 4 of them that are going to be left are, nice caliber sized trees with really nice canopies on them.
Yeah, that's the hardship I come into. What kind of leniency do I have on that? And if I was the person, maybe rewriting that ordinance, say, they're due to certain circumstances, I could wave the magic wand and say, yeah, let's go with one less tree. I don't have that flexibility. If the ordinance says you'll have 1 per every 40 feet street trees, you have 1 per every 40 feet. But it also says you can group them and do different things instead of having them just spaced out.
Well, right, I understand that, and that's how they are. I do have a one question, if I could propose to you. Where does Hillwood fall into here?
Well, Hillwood does not fall into the jurisdiction of how the city interprets their ordinances.
Okay, I was just wondering, because I know we went through a whole, process with them, because they've come out to the property and said, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that, and everything else. And that's why what happened is we started working with them. And then when I went to the city, it was kind of a different thing, which I understand, except that Hillwood was also telling us that, no, you have to do it this way. And supposedly, because they're a HOA, but for commercial property,
Yeah,
they
POA
say
type, yeah.
POA, yeah, that they could fine us and everything else. And so we kind of got caught in the middle of between the city of Hazlet and Hillwood.
Well, we do not enforce the POA standards. We can only enforce our standards.
Right.
So, that's, yeah.
And they both came, with two different, we kind of had two different aspects of the approach on this. But I think overall we've got a good solution to it, and it's going to be nice at that building.
I think it will be good. We just need to make sure we can work it out.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate everybody's time.
Okay, are there any other questions for the city staff or the applicant?
I have a quick one. Can those trees not be trimmed from underneath so that you can see?
Well, yeah, the canopy.
Please.
The canopies at this time are raised, but what happens is that, when you put in the minimum, I think standard is a 3-inch caliber tree, that eventually in 10, 15 years is going to be, 10, 12, 14 inches in diameter. So you have that blind spot. And what happened was also, we went back to with the POA, was that they wanted ornamental trees on the front too. So all of a sudden now we're having to add ornamentals, which typically don't grow as high as a canopy tree. And it just gets completely overgrown that they're on top of each other. And the canopy trees have been trimmed down. There's certain things you can do with them and certain things you got to be careful of. But I guess we can set it back further, but I just don't want, what happens is that this are mature trees in here now. And so we start putting in smaller trees there. It's definitely going to have to be something you have to stay on top of when we down the road, because they are going to get much bigger in diameter and height. And it just was getting real condensed up at that one western corner right sitting there by Westport Parkway and that exit.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, Chris?
I think the suggestion from staff would be to take our standards and back to Hillwood. They're usually pretty good to work with, and say we must meet this, and then they'll massage that around. They're usually pretty good to work with. So again, I mean, we don't have the ability to vary our landscaping. They certainly will have more ability because they don't have ordinances, and just ask them to say, hey, I've gotten my feedback. Could you shuffle those trees around for us? Understanding the sight line.
Right. I understand that.
Okay, any other questions for the city staff or the applicant? If not, is there a motion?
Paul Wallach, make a motion that we recommend approval to City Council of a site plan for 791 Westport Parkway, Lot 1, Block 3, Westport Park Addition.
Motion to recommend approval, or is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion been seconded. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item 5, we don't need an executive session, or agenda item 6. And agenda item 7, there was a report in our meeting materials of status of current projects. So take time to look at that. If you have any questions, reach out to the appropriate city staff to get updates. And agenda item 8, future agenda items. Anything that we need to be aware of? I know we don't want to begin discussion on future meeting items, but
The only thing is, there's a special meeting that the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to have. Approximately, was it 2 weeks?
April 5th, Tuesday, yes.
yep, okay. And I will not be in attendance to that, so if you, that might be a good idea. All right, and then you're going to review the meeting minutes from our April, May timeframe meeting to confirm that the meeting schedule is the last Tuesday of the month. Okay. Is that what you recall as well? The last Tuesday of the month? Correct. Okay. There's nothing else. The meeting is adjourned. The time is 7:29 p.m.
Night all.
Good night.
This conference is no longer being recorded.